Hey everyone, I am so excited to be here with all of you today. My name is Dr. Kerry Magro, a professional speaker and autism self-advocate. Welcome to my page. And I am here with a very special guest today. I would like to introduce you to Stephen. Now, Stephen, ironically enough, was one of the resumes that I was actually given to potentially be one of my research interns. And Stephen is actually my intern for this, uh, for the next few weeks, actually. He's actually been working with us for quite some time now. But anyway, Stephen is originally from Central New Jersey. And he was diagnosed with autism when he was 12 years old. He currently resides in Las Vegas. He has a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, and would like to pursue education in the future. And he wears many, many hats in the community. And I'm just so excited to have you here, Stephen. How's your day going so far?
So far, so good. How about yourself?
So far, so good. As I was telling Stephen before we jumped on, I'm have a little cold, so I'm pushing through. But I'm really, really excited to highlight Stephen's story. So, Stephen, let's just kick it off right away and just tell us, what would you like the world to know about you?
So I'm going to be 34 in a couple of months, and it's been a journey the last, I'd say, 30 years. So we knew something was different as young as preschool, and it just took, I'd say, 8 years to hit everything from PDD-NOS to everything you could think of. And then we initially thought about moving out to Las Vegas when my dad retired in 98. So I was 10 at the time. And we took one look at the school district and said, forget it. And I'm sad to say that not much has changed since. But we ultimately moved to Southern New Jersey. And that's where we finally got the term du jour back then, which was Asperger's.
Yep. Yep.
And I distinctly remember my dad had a very successful career in the finance industry. And we suspect to this day that he's also on the spectrum as well, because we have very similar characteristics.
Now, that's interesting, Stephen, because there have actually been a lot of people going about receiving a diagnosis in adulthood. We just had Wentworth Miller, who is an actor from Prison Break, just came about having an autism diagnosis. I've noticed that happening a lot. Has your dad actually ever wanted to go about getting a diagnosis as an adult, just to know?
So he's kind of always been the anti-mental health one in the family. I'm not the only one with a diagnosis of some sort. 2 first cousins, one on each side, that I'm familiar with, have diagnoses of their own. So it's made for an interesting family dynamic and some very interesting conversations over the years.
Well, everyone, again, this is Stephen. My name is Dr. Kerry Magro. Feel free to post a question in the comments, and Stephen and I will potentially answer your question while we're talking today. In addition to that, I just wanted to remind everyone that our new book, Autistics on Autism, is coming out on March 29th on Amazon for paperback and Kindle. 100% of the proceeds are going back to the nonprofit that I'm CEO for and Stephen's an intern for. So again, just leave your question and also tell us where you're tuning in from today, whether you're tuning in from the US, internationally, and also if you have a child who is diagnosed on the autism spectrum or you yourself are diagnosed with autism. So, Stephen, what were some of the earliest memories you remember from being diagnosed at 12? Because I was diagnosed when I was 4, and it took about 18 months to get a formal diagnosis of autism. Were there ever any signs that your parents saw that made you initially get that diagnosis at 12?
So Um, I kind of more remember the aftermath more so than the lead up. So, having already moved to South Jersey uh, for sixth grade, by the time I got to ninth grade, which was several years later in high school, those first couple of years until we ultimately left New Jersey, I did not cope well. So much so that the local police department knew us by name because I was physically aggressive in those first couple of years and just, like I said, did not. And it was, I think it was kind of an emotional reaction on top of being a teenager to this newfound word to describe what I had been dealing with for at least 8 years.
Got it. Now, Stephen, obviously there are a lot of parents out there who have children and sometimes adults who have challenging behaviors. If there is a parent who might be watching this who has a child, because also I had meltdowns as a kid, I had a lot of sensory challenges as well. What advice would you give them based on your journey, also having similar challenges?
So I think don't be fearful. It's it's just a word, but I think it's becoming, the longer we research it, uh, it's becoming accepted and just a way of life that having that word kind of just fits you in a box isn't the right word, but fits you into
Right, right.
this international paradigm uh, that's different than anyone else, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So we have Kevron tuning in with us today. Hey, Kevron, how you doing? So Kevron is tuning in from Cope, South Carolina, and he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4 in 1998. Thanks for tuning in, Kevin. And we have another person coming in from Costa Rica. We have some big fans here. My son Aaron is almost 4 and is also on the spectrum. I'm so proud of him. We do lots of therapy, language, occupational therapy. And she actually has a great question. So her question, and I just took it off for a second because it was cutting off half the screen. But Stephen, I would love your perspective on this. Uh, Tatiana writes, what else can I do as a parent to help and support my son? What did your parents do for you that made a difference in your life? Was there anything in particular that really stuck out to you, Stephen, on what your parents did for you?
Sure. So I'll answer the first part first. I think early intervention is key. I wish I had had it, um, because I think it would have shaped my experience a little differently than it turned out. In terms of um, what my parents did in that 8 year period, I was very typical kind of school age child, involved in sports and things that early school age children are typically involved in. But they were never afraid um, to seek help. I mean, I remember one incident prior to diagnosis, and the reason I remember it so vividly is because it surrounded the Columbine incident, and that's what kind of led us on the 2 year journey. Now, granted, we moved uh, in that time from central New Jersey to south, but I remember, uh, like I said, shortly after the Columbine incident, which I believe was 1998, uh, in an emotional reaction, threatening to blow up my school. And I remember principal called us in, and we had a great relationship with the principal. But I remember him saying, I don't want to suspend him, but in light of what's happened, we have zero tolerance. And that kind of led us down the path of psychology, psychiatry, etc., which then just followed us to South Jersey.
Got it. Got it. We have another comment coming in from Marlene. Hey, Marlene, thanks for joining us today. And she says she's happy for you and your successes. So, Stephen, just going off Marlene's comment, I'm based on kind of just your journey. What do you hope to do in education in the future? If you just had to pick like one potential career for yourself, what do you think that would be?
So it would definitely be civil rights lawyer, to be able to advocate, because taking employment as an example, and the case is still pending, so I don't want to say too much about it, but there are so many entities, governments and private industry, it really takes the gamut, that don't understand basic things like the Americans with Disabilities Act. And they kind of, I mean, I had, in this case that's pending, I had the defendants go so far as to allege that autism wasn't a disability. How crazy is that?
That's crazy. I mean, I feel like a lot of the times people characterize autism as a superpower. And don't get me wrong, there are people with incredible gifts and strengths on the autism spectrum. But at the end of the day, we also have to acknowledge the fact that it is a disability. And I feel like a lot of the times people, they kind of like even highlight like the concept of, oh, it's an ability, it's not a disability. I feel like that would help normalize autism in cases like you're discussing as well. So we have a great question that just came in from Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Jennifer writes, she's from Minnesota, I believe. Minnesota, my son was just diagnosed at age 12. Ironically, Stephen was also diagnosed at age 12. He's a gifted musician and composer. This consumes most of his time. Other things go to the wayside, like school. How do we help him make school more of a priority? He's amazingly smart, but grades do not show it. Stephen, was there anything your parents did that helped you try to prioritize school growing up?
So it was just, I was always in public school. But the nice thing was, and I'm looking at your recent survey results to see if Minnesota's on either list. It's not. So it's one of those middle of the pack states, 30 middle of the pack ones. But I think public school is not for everyone. And I think that if you're going to go that route, having great relationships with teachers, whatever child study teams are called in individual jurisdictions, the team of professionals that will potentially support your child, and then also any extracurriculars, whether it be applied behavioral analysis or anything like that, will shape your experience. But don't be afraid to prioritize other activities to make the best experience for your child. I remember in college as an undergrad, did very well in community college, and then was just so done by the time I got to 4-year that my grades suffered. And it was self-imposed because I was going part-time and doing all these other things that I kind of, like her son, put school on the back burner.
Right. So Jennifer, ironically enough, I discuss a little bit about the topic of schooling and the public school versus private school in a new frequently asked question list that I came out with. So if you're curious about getting that list, I also discuss things such as toilet training. Obviously, your child is 12, so that wouldn't be something that you'd be interested in. But also picky eating challenges, challenging behaviors, and so much more. I'll include a link to that in the comments if it would be helpful for you and your child. But great question. So, Stephen, so obviously we have, and I love that you kind of mentioned a reference of research in Minnesota. We've kind of, as an autism society, we right now we're getting ready for April, which is World Autism Month to so many people. Where do you feel on some of the divide that's in our community between people who say it should be Autism Awareness Month versus Autism Acceptance Month? Have you heard of this debate, and where do you kind of lie on that debate?
I have, and the other debate that I've heard of is person first versus identity first. And
Preach.
that's an even bigger one. And I just got a chance to tout that in a recent job interview with one of the autism nonprofits nationally. But I think that awareness isn't enough. I think, like I'd mentioned early on, that until we normalize it and accept people for who they are, then we're going to there's going to be a divide between neurodiverse folks and non-neurodiverse folks, regular old people. And I think that we need to treat folks on the spectrum, regardless of where they fall, like people first, and then just go from there.
Got it. Hey, Stephen, we're having a little bit of background noise. No worries. I was just, I think it might be coming from your microphone, but it's okay for right now. If anyone in the comments is bothered by it at all, we'll figure it out. But anyways, so again, my name is Dr. Kerry Magro. I'm here with Stephen Cohen, my intern. He was diagnosed with autism at 12. Feel free to like this video, share this video, and in addition to that, check out Autistics on Autism on March 29th on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Michelle writes and just wanted to say hi to you, Stephen, which I think is very nice. So again, feel free to leave a comment for Stephen in the comments, and we'll try to get to it during our Facebook Live today. So Stephen, we obviously both have navigated a post-secondary education and have graduated from college. What were some of the challenges for you in post-secondary? Obviously, we just broke down schooling. What was there any challenges specifically that you had to navigate when you were in post-secondary?
Yep. So a lot of teachers, I would say more so when I got to 4-year, were of this old school line of thinking and didn't want to implement basic accommodations that the Disability Resource Center, whatever individual institution will call that office that supports students with disabilities, had made determinations on favorably based upon the clinical documentation that I had submitted. So I can't tell you how many times my assigned specialist, caseworker, would have to educate professors. I mean, it's in 2016, by the time I graduated, that's a sad state of affairs. No matter how long you've been teaching, you've probably run into, in post-secondary, a student with a disability. You just may not realize it because a lot of people kind of stigmatize it and don't want to seek the help that's available to them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And honestly, that stigma can just go on for so many people's lives. I mean, it doesn't just happen in school, but it happens in the workplace so often. There's such a giant stigma. But also at the same time, I feel like a lot of the times that stigma also, we have a huge unemployment rate problem in the United States for autistic individuals. Some statistics indicate that up to 90% of autistic adults are unemployed or underemployed. And I think a lot of that sometimes comes back to that stigma. And I often say this, it's not about what an autistic person can do. It's not about what a company can do for that autistic person. It's what an autistic person can do for that company if given the opportunity. We have a great comment coming in from Falbana. I am sorry, I hack names all the time, so I hope that was close enough. My son is 5 years old and is autistic. He lives and studies in Germany for almost 1 year with his grandfather. We're not there with him, and I worry he is not forgetting us as a parent. Oh, Falbana, I'm so sorry to hear that. I definitely hope that in the digital age that we live in, that hopefully you are able to still communicate in some way. We have a comment from a self-advocate who follows our Facebook page, Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, how's it going? I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 8 back in November 1997. Jonathan, thank you for tuning in with us today. So the other reason why I mentioned post-secondary, Stephen, is because we have a scholarship program for autistic students to go to college. We've given out 100 scholarships, partial scholarships, in the past 9 years for autistic students to go to college. So if anyone's curious about that, feel free to write your curiosity in the comments, and I'll share a link at the end of our Facebook Live today. So, Stephen, obviously we talked about it being a village to take care of an autistic child. When you were growing up, who were some role models that you had that helped you during even during your initial diagnosis, or even maybe before that?
Sure. So definitely my parents, for sure. They've been, still are.
Hey, Stephen, I think your mic fell out because you're very, very low right now. Do you want to take your mic out completely, and maybe you could use your desktop? Try to say something, Stephen. Oh, no. Uh, oh, okay. Yeah, you have to put your mic in. I'm so sorry, Stephen. Yeah, you have to put your mic back in. It's saying you need a mic for some reason. Anyways, we will get Stephen back in just a quick second. Stephen, let me know as soon as you're back in. You need to unmute your mic, which should probably be on the bottom of your screen, and then you should be good to go. Stephen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Okay, actually, you sound much more crisp and louder now. Great. Well, Stephen, in addition to just everything that we've been talking about, what do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do in your spare time?
So it's funny. I'm part of a social club here in Las Vegas for neurodiverse adults 18 and over. And we're going to celebrate our 15th anniversary later this year. So we'll regularly do events like bowling, movies. I'm the sports guru, becoming a sports town, and always looking to add more. So it'll be interesting to see if baseball holds up today.
I don't think it is. I think we're on a lockout, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's great. So who are your teams?
So the Yankees, even though I'm here, the Rangers.
I'm sorry, I'm a Mets fan.
That's all right.
It's okay.
I got a friend that's almost 30. He's going to be 39 in a couple of months. He's also a Met fan, so it's a regular Raz. So you weren't too disappointed that Jeter stepped down today, or were you?
I love Jeter. I mean, Jeter's the man. I mean, Jeter, it's the ladies' man. I mean, he's the captain. But yeah, the Miami Marlins had no money. But that's a story for another day. So do you follow other sports as well? Basketball, soccer, hockey?
Yeah, Knicks, Rangers. Trying to think. Not much, not really much beyond that.
Did you ever play sports, and were they ever a benefit growing up on the spectrum?
So yeah, the longest one I was involved with was organized baseball until ninth grade, when I was unfortunately cut from the high school team in favor of our neighbor in front of us. They offered me the team manager position, but it would just been too much of there was too much politics that were involved, even at that age, to stick it out. But then I also did basketball, soccer briefly, and gymnastics.
Nice.
And definitely, like I said, soccer was the first one I gave up, but there definitely was a social benefit. In other words, being able to know my peers in the town and surrounding towns.
Nice. We have a great question that just came in from Farah from the UK. Hey, Farah, how's it going? So Farah says, my son is 9 soon. He's been diagnosed since the age of 3. He has selective mutism, which has improved a lot of the years. Any advice how to deal with not wanting to go to school? Oh, that's a great question. Every day starts with I don't want to go to school, even though he has great friends and amazing teachers. He says he gets tired. How do we overcome or solve this? Sports days and art activity days, we have no problems. I was right there with you. Stephen, I'll have you answer this question in a second. Farah, what I would just say, just based on my own personal experience as somebody who's also on the spectrum, definitely really try to find out what that trigger is of not wanting to go to school, because sometimes it can just be a transition issue. I would kick and scream and punch the door because I didn't want to go through that transition of going from my house and having a specific set routine in that house to a routine that was vastly different, especially going off the weekend and going back in on a Monday. So definitely try to find out what the trigger is. I think that will be a benefit towards yourself. And then also look at reward systems. I mean, the benefits of just succeeding in school. Is there a reward that you can provide your child at the end of the day for school? Definitely don't necessarily do reward systems as they're getting older. Try to wean themselves off that. But it could be something that might be able to benefit your child in school currently to get them to go to school. Stephen, what would your advice be on this topic?
So definitely, I would agree. I'm not as familiar with international systems and therapies, but I think a functional behavioral assessment might be in order to find that trigger. And I think that once you figure out what that is, putting the necessary accommodations in place through either an IEP or a 504, whichever benefits, like I said, probably not applicable in the UK necessarily, but there's got to be some sort of support systems. These diagnoses began internationally. I believe Denmark is where they kind of took off back in the mid 80s, and it's so it's just there's got to be some way, even if it's not the same as it is in the US, to address it.
Yeah, Farah, what I would also say is there is a great Facebook Live that we did with an autistic teacher from the UK. If you go to Carrie's Autism Journey and go to our videos tab, you could scroll down. It's from a teacher who's in her 20s. Really, really amazing perspective on the UK system of education and also being herself on the autism spectrum. So definitely check that out. We have a question coming in from Angie. Hey, Angie, how you doing today? Angie writes, "Hi, I have a 3.5-year-old who was diagnosed last summer. He's in preschool in a EL classroom, and they already telling me that he might not qualify for next school year. I'm nervous to send him to a regular classroom." Stephen, during your experiences, were you ever in a special education setting versus a mainstream inclusion classroom?
Yes. Was pulled out for forget if it was reading or language arts once we moved to South Jersey, and had already started before that. But I distinctly remember, going back to your sports comment for a minute, one of my colleagues in that class turned out to be a player with the Nets. So
Who's his name? Just out of curiosity.
Dennis Horner.
Oh, okay. All right. Blast from the past. Nice. Very cool.
Yep. So what I would say to Angie's question is preschool was when we found the differences. For example, balancing activities, physical balance were difficult. But then I would also, both at school and in the community, at that age, you're kind of trying to socialize folks for the first time. Would always be the one that would clean up after myself at a party. So I think she was referencing, if I'm not mistaken, EI for early intervention.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think.
Sorry, I said EL.
That's all right. But I think that having that conversation with the school district, and don't be afraid to exercise your rights.
Yep. No, I agree.
If he's going to benefit from EI, I think the reason that they might be telling you that he's not going to qualify is, I believe EI typically ends at age 3, doesn't it?
It's usually birth to 3 is when EI in the United States, at least. Just to go off what Steven said, which is great advice, Angie. What I would also say is definitely look at rights law. Definitely look at how you might be able. There's a website called rightslaw.com, which can help prepare you to be an advocate. Also, I would definitely recommend, if there aren't this in place, taking a partners in policymaking course in your local area. It definitely can help you understand a little bit more about how you can advocate for your child, even if it's not specifically in this specific situation, how you can advocate in your state for educational opportunities for your child that might not be in place right now.
Definitely. A graduate of PIP, definitely tout it. And then also, the same year, I was ambitious and did the LEND program in Nevada.
Nice.
So
awesome.
Proud graduate of both of those, and definitely would tout it. And it's going to be difficult to get in, certainly to LEND, but keep trying, and one day the opportunity will come up in your state, and it'll be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life. You'll make contacts that you'll have for the rest of your professional life.
Yeah. Stephen, you don't know those websites off the top of your head, do you? For partners in policy and LEND?
No, the LEND is the national organization for LEND is AUCD. That's A as in apple, U as in umbrella, C as in Charles, D as in David. So that's who the national organization for the LEND and USED programs, which Bog Center is in New Jersey for both of those. And then selected states also have what are known as IDDRCs, which is Intellectual and Developmental Disability Research Centers. But there's very few of those. across the world. And I don't know the PIP website off the top of my head, but I do know it comes out of Minnesota. Yeah.
Got it. We have a great question, or actually a comment that came in from Jen Solo. Jen Solo is, ironically enough, from my hometown of Jersey City, New Jersey, before I moved to Hoboken 4 years ago. Jen writes, I'm not a parent of a child with autism, but I work at a school that serves students all across the spectrum from ages 5 to 21. Jen, I would be curious to know what school that is. I may have spoken there in the past. I've spoken at a few Jersey City schools in the past 12 years that I've been speaking professionally. I wish more parents knew of specialized programs for their children so they can advocate for a proper placement in the school system. Yeah, Jen, you're kind of just preaching to the choir right there. What I love that we have in New Jersey is Autism New Jersey, which definitely advocates. They're one of the largest nonprofit organizations in New Jersey, and they definitely advocate for school supports often.
And the one thing I'll add on Jen's point is that what a lot of the stigma, I think, comes down to is that autism doesn't end at age 18 or 22. So there's got to be a system in place for supports across the lifespan and across the spectrum.
Yeah. Shannon wrote in, hey, Shannon, this is it's a little bit of work on this one, but Shannon, I appreciate you writing. And Shannon writes, my son was diagnosed with selective mutism at 4 and autism at 10. He had school refusal for years. What I learned was there was specific things in the classroom that were meant to be motivational for my son made him feel less than his peers because it showed the other students how far behind he was in math. He also did not feel comfortable to go up to the teacher to ask for help, and the teacher never would go to his desk to ask for help. He also was losing recess because he did. Yeah, Shannon, I think one of the things our schools need to do a better job overall is providing positive peer role models for our kids, and try to stay away from inspiration porn. We have this phrase in the community called inspiration porn, which kind of sometimes detracts from realism and realistic expectations for some individuals with disabilities. Don't get me wrong, it's a very wide spectrum. But ironically enough, and I've told this story thousands of times, especially on my Facebook page, I found out about my diagnosis. We were playing disability celebrity bingo in a social skills class. I was 11. We were learning that Michael Jordan has ADD, Magic Johnson has ADHD. The teacher says, all these individuals are special, just like you. I raised my hand. I asked, why was I special? And that was the first time I sat my parents down after school that day, after the teacher said I should talk to my parents about that. And they told me that I had autism. And I started getting positive peer role models right after that. And it definitely helped with some of the challenges I was facing, especially with that whole inspiration, motivational stuff that you mentioned. Stephen, did you ever notice that in especially your K through 12 experience?
Not so much, but I wish I had. That was the one deficit, it's the best way I can put it, that I didn't have very many friends in K-12. It really wasn't until 4th year that, with one exception, that I started to open up and talk about it, and from that gain valuable friendships that I'll keep for the rest of my life.
Nice. And Jen wrote back and said, regional day school in Jersey City. Jen, I've been an elf during the regional day Christmas party for several years. I was also a reindeer one year. I absolutely love the kids. And if you talk to Colleen Henry, just tell her I miss her, and yeah, I hope she's doing well. We have a great question from Jennifer Hutchinson. She writes, if you feel he's not ready or still have questions, maybe an advocate would be helpful. And or if the school is saying they won't provide services, has your child been diagnosed outside of the school official diagnosis? Jennifer, I'm not sure if this was a specific comment that you had for one of the parents, but feel free to just go back into the comments, and just if it was specifically for somebody in particular, just let them know.
The one thing that I will address from that, even if it was meant for a specific parent, is a lot of times the school will not accept an outside diagnosis and vice versa to receive appropriate supports. So you may have double diagnosis to be able to get the appropriate supports in the appropriate setting.
Yeah, well said. Well said. We have a self-advocate who wrote in, Thomas Hassel. Thomas comes to us from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and was diagnosed with Asperger's at age 44. Thomas is a great friend, also self-advocate. He does a lot of great work in the community with the Autism Society of Greater Harrisburg. And Thomas, I also owe you a response to one of your emails. I've just been completely booked, no segue to my book coming out 3/29 Autistics on Autism. Kakali, sorry, again, I probably hacked all of your names today, minus Jennifer, so apologize for that. Kakali just writes, hi, Kakali, so glad to have you with us. So, Stephen, while we're just wrapping up for today, I guess a question that I ask all the self-advocates I interview for this video series is, what else would you like the world to know about your story?
Sure. So I have autism. I'm proud of it. And in the next 60 years, I'm going to change the world. And hopefully that'll be in New Jersey at some point. Love to move back.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, is there any way, are there any social media channels that you would like to share on how people can stay in contact with you after this? Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to say anything. But is there any way?
I do have an unpublished one that's Self-Advocacy 101, and it has my name attached to the beginning of it. I'm going to potentially take it nonprofit in the future, but for now it's unpublished to kind of work on it and business plan and all that good stuff that comes with nonprofiting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Stephen, feel free to write that in the comments of this Facebook post later, just for anyone who's interested who might have been tuning in. But I thank you all so much for joining us. Again, my name is Dr. Kerry Magra, a professional speaker, author, and autistic self-advocate, here with Stephen, who is one of our interns who was diagnosed with autism at 12, hearing a little bit more about Stephen's story. Again, for anyone who is just tuning in right now, you could check out our new book, Autistics on Autism, on 3/29/22 on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And until the next interview, again, if you had a question we didn't get to, feel free to fill it out in the link in the form, and I'll potentially talk to Stephen and see if we can answer that for you offline. But for now, thanks for joining in, and talk to you soon.
Sounds good.